Hey, folks. New Year's come and gone. We're starting to settle into our regular schedules, which means that it's time to go back to some sleep and some trying to just chill out a little bit. How do I do that? Well, one of my main go-tos, Sunset Lake Seder tinctures. That is my main go-to, and it's been my main go-to for years now. Jeez. And they're having a huge sale. 35% off all Seder tinctures. All you got to do is use the coupon code tincture at checkout. Sale ends February 3rd at midnight. So you get about 6 or 7 days. Check it out, folks. The tinctures have been huge in helping me sleep. Sometimes, when I'm Saturday afternoon, kids are getting a little bit, difficult. I need to make sure I take a little bit of that edge off, but I still need to function with them. A little bit of tincture. And they have all sorts of different concentrations, 3 different flavors, mint, original, and what's the other one?
There's orange
Citrus.
or citrus, yes.
Citrus. This is a great company. You've heard me talk about them for years now. Sunset Lake Seder. They are a majority worker-owned company. When they hire people, it's at $20 minimum wage. They grow all the hemp they use in their products. They do not use pesticides. They use integrated pest management. Everything they have, third-party tested to ensure quality. You can see that on their site. You can see it when you order it. Now, all Seder tinctures, 35% off with the coupon code tincture at checkout. Of course, you can get everything else at a 20% discount at Left is Best, their coupon code. But the tinctures help with aches, pains, including pains that might come in the form of 2 smaller children. One actually sort of bigger, but that's I love my kids. That's not, come on. But it also has really been wonderful to help me sleep. SunsetLakeSeder.com. Use the code tincture at checkout. Save 35% on all tinctures. Do not sleep on this, folks. Great time to try out a tincture. Sale ends.
But sleep with it.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Sale ends February 3rd. That's good. Now for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it.
We do for
and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, January 27th. 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, executive editor of the American Prospect, David Dayen. On Biden's Chapter 2, Return of the Corporations. Also on the program today, lefty from way back, David Feldman will be joining us. Meanwhile, Jeff Zients named the new Biden chief of staff. And in Memphis, grand jury indicts 5 cops on murder charges as video of the killing of Tyree Nichols will be released tonight. RNC holds its very, very tense chairmanship elections today. I don't want to sway anybody's vote, but fingers crossed for the My Pillow guy. Adam Schiff announces a run for the California Senate versus, at the very least, Congresswoman Katie Porter. Florida will be bumping nearly 1 million people off of Medicaid come April. And, of course, Ron DeSantis wants you to be thinking about how woke things are. Russian strikes in Ukraine kill 11. FDA recommends the bivalent bivalent booster vaccine becomes the norm as a CDC study shows vaccines effective in illness reduction and at about 50% of efficacy in preventing infections. GDP grew by 2.9% in Q4 of 2002 as inflation and consumer spending slowed. Wages still hanging in there. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is Casual Friday. And, of course, Em and I both, pretty casual today.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty casual.
Collarless.
Yep. I've like
collar.
moved into like
Wow, the collarless era.
Yeah.
If we plotted this out over time, I think we're getting a lot of a cluster of collarless activity going on lately.
Oh my God. Far more.
Much more concentrated over the past 3 months than have ever before.
Yeah, I tried to get like the soft collar long sleeve shirt, couldn't find one, and I said, screw it, I'm just going with a long sleeve t-shirt. So, I don't. If people have a problem with that, fine.
Yeah.
Don't watch the show. I don't care.
If you want your host to be wearing a fedora, go somewhere else.
Exactly.
And there are plenty of places you can go.
I only wear a hat on this program when I am like literally playing a character. Anyways, really disturbing video supposedly is about to be coming out tonight. In this yesterday in Memphis, 5 cops were indicted for murder. And here is a clip of Rovan. Is that her name? How do we pronounce it? Wells.
The mother of
Tyree
Nichols, who was murdered.
Who was murdered by the cops. He, 25-year-old guy, I think it was, right? 25, 26?
Yeah.
29. And they stopped him at a traffic stop. That escalates. Again, we haven't seen the video yet. The city has been bracing now for more than a week of the release of the video footage that apparently is just brutal to watch. And Tyree's mother has, in audio I heard today, I don't think we have that. We have an interview with her on Democracy Now! And this part of the family. Basically said, peaceful protests. That's what Tyree would have wanted. And here is Amy Goodman interviewing Tyree's family, and I believe with Tyree's lawyer, or the family's lawyer.
Benjamin Crump.
Tyree has a 4-year-old son. Tell us more about who he was, about his skateboarding prowess, working at FedEx, coming home for lunch each day to you. Just talk about how you want us to remember him.
I want you to remember Tyree. Tyree was different. Tyree didn't follow everyone. He was his own leader. He had a beautiful soul and he touched everyone. The boy smiled all the time. He loved his mother's cooking. He loved his son. That's why he came to Memphis in the first place, to be with his mom, build a better life for him and his son. But Memphis took my son away from me. I have nothing.
Tyree had a tattoo of you on his arm?
He had my name on a tattoo of my name on his arm.
So this is going to be a tough, evening in terms of this video. Obviously, we'll have seen it over the weekend, but just another example of this going on, and
and how systemic it is. I mean, they were 5 black cops, right? And so I'm seeing a lot of like, kind of cynical commentary on it, but this is what structural racism is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is that there's a problem with the police, which is what people have been saying in this country. And there was the idea of any type of reform. There was a lot of support, even, as late as in September of 2020 for Black Lives Matter. And it had gone down from over the course of the summer, but not dramatically. And yet, we watched the Republican Party didn't care, but the Democratic Party, basically guys who ended up losing in New York State, begin to sort of create some narrative that this was somehow, despite the fact that it was popular, was an electoral detriment.
Biden was
Which it absolutely
chanting-
wasn't.
No,
well,
it
that's the
wasn't.
point. I mean,
Biden was chanting "Fund the police" at the State of the Union
The
over and over
The
again.
Democrats benefited massively from the George Floyd protests, and they didn't deserve it.
It was a fundraising opportunity for them. They've done nothing on legislation. In fact, they've done the
armed more
opposite and
The opposite.
argued for the opposite.
the opposite.
And so, my point is just that structures and institutions can be racist. It's not about the individual. We have a racist police system in this country.
That gets away with murder.
Tom Hartman had a piece, and he just, it was actually it was a great piece where he laid out how common it is in the United States relative to other countries for police to murder people. It's 30 times more common in the United States than in Germany and the UK.
Yep.
Just think about that.
And I mean, this is the point. It's not enough to lock up individuals in these instances. You need to reform policing in this country. There's really no other. The police should not be in charge.
They should be in way fewer places and way fewer situations.
Yes, there's absolutely no reason for them to be doing traffic stops.
I'm not sure Spain is probably dealing with homelessness and stuff as well as anyone, but it struck me when I was there a year or so ago, they had vans that were there just to address emergency situations with people who weren't armed.
Yes,
Mental health stuff.
There's no reason why you need armed police doing traffic stops.
Exactly.
You don't.
It's ridiculous.
You don't. All right. In a minute, we're going to be talking to David Dayen, who has been on a tear as of late in terms of what he's writing, and also about the new chief of staff and sort of getting a report card in terms of the Biden administration's dealing with corporations in a moment. In the meantime, a couple of words from our sponsors. One of them today is ZBiotics. It is a pre-alcohol probiotic. It is a genetically engineered probiotic. You drink it before drinking alcohol to avoid a rough next morning type of situation. Get back to living your life. Scientists invented it because they know the real problem is not dehydration, apparently. It is a toxic byproduct of alcohol in your gut. And ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic is the only product that breaks it down. Just remember, you drink responsibly, you get plenty of rest, and the next morning, you're good to go. I took a bunch of this on that cruise because, more often than not, if I'm, I have some latitude on the weekends. But during the week, I don't want to, if I decide to have a drink or two and, you're on a boat, and of course you're going to. Next day I got to go and do some panels. I got to talk to people, and this stuff works. It really does. And it saves you because you can go out, have a drink, have a couple of drinks. Doesn't matter. As long as you drink the ZBiotic beforehand. Next morning, I was playing basketball. I was going on panels. I was really enjoying the cruising life, as it were. You can get 15% off your first order of ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic by clicking the link in the description box and use my code majority at checkout. Go to zbiotics.com/majority. Get 15% off on your first order. That's zbiotics.com/majority. Get 15% off on your first order. Check it out. Super Bowl right around the corner.
Yes.
I have a feeling I know somebody who might be overindulging, and then she's got to show up at work on Monday. Just saying. Order your Z-Biotics now.
missed day, though.
You get
When
it
are
in
they going
plenty
to
of
move
time.
that to a long weekend?
Yeah.
But
that's not
first, I need the
happening.
Z-Biotics. You got to stop hoarding it.
15% off for your first order. I bought a 12-pack.
Oh, you bought it.
Oh yeah, I bought a 12-pack. I'm not messing around. Also, another sponsor today, Manukora honey. It is the bar none. I mean, look, I haven't tried every single honey on the planet, but it is the best tasting honey I have ever tried, and I've tasted a lot of honey, and it comes from New Zealand. It is there's apparently a particular island where the bees feed on the nectar of the Manuka tea tree, and they make a honey, honestly, that is taste-wise and texture-wise unlike any honey you have ever tasted. It is Manukora. They have the texture is super creamy. It tastes almost like caramel. It has, unique antioxidants and prebiotics, has natural antibacterial compound called MGO that only comes from the nectar of this tea tree. Honey in general is sort of like a naturally antibacterial, but this is like supercharged. It contains nutrients that support optimal immune and digestive health. I will take a shot of it just in the evening. I want a little sweet stuff, but it's not as like super sweet as regular honey. It really is amazing. But of course, you can put it on ice cream. You can put it on, I don't know, you can put it in your tea or your coffee. It really is delicious. Manukora's Super Honey is available in a range of easy-to-use formats, including squeeze bottles and compostable honey stick packs. So you can eat it straight or add it to your favorite food or beverage on the go. If you head to manukora.com/majority, you'll automatically get a free pack of honey sticks with your order. It's a $15 value. That is MANUKORA. Manukora.com/majority. Get a free pack of honey sticks with your order. It's called Honey with Superpowers for good reason. So get on it. Try this delicious, creamy caramel honey. You won't look back at Manukora. And lastly, a lot of scams out there, a lot of attempts at stealing your identity. Twitter had a breach. I guess it was in November. I now know like multiple people who have had their accounts hacked in. Jonathan Larson had his account
Oh,
hacked.
really?
Yep.
Well, David Dayen.
Oh, and Dayen had
Who's
his account.
coming on.
Yes. And what happens is they steal, there's a data leak from somewhere. They see the password and the email combination that you use, and then they just go around to all sorts of websites and they break into your whatever it is. And
Don't reuse passwords, folks.
do not reuse passwords. But there's also something else you can do to make sure that you're basically you're not whatever, you're protected. And it is Aura, today's sponsor. Aura is an easy use app. It includes everything you need to stay safe online. Aura protects you from those scammers and hackers. And what they do is they scan the dark web. That's where, like, basically, criminals sell this information. They look for your emails, they look for your passwords, they look for your social security number, and it alerts you fast if they find anything. They help you fight back against those websites that post your public information because they automatically send takedown notices to them. And apparently the sites have to do that. And they have to do it on some type of like consistent basis. They put it back up, but Aura will repeatedly send automatic requests to remove your info, gets rid of robocalls, keeps you safe from, I don't know, all sorts of people want to dox you, stuff like that. Aura gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries. Someone tries to, I don't know, get a car loan or open a loan or get a credit card in your name. You will know about it. I got alerted to when I opened up a new bank account for Mila. It was me, but it was really comforting, actually, to see something like that. Their VPN allows you to stay anonymous online, keeps your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted. They protect your devices from viruses, malware, spyware, any of that stuff, so that guys can't break in and, I don't know, mess with your stuff, find your passwords or your logins or, hold your computer ransom. Or also helps you manage what your kids can do online with their devices. You can restrict specific apps. You can set screen time limits. You can set focus time, all of it. They have a password manager that lets you store and access your online passwords securely and conveniently. And you might have an app that does one or two of these things. This does all of those things. You don't need 7 separate apps for this stuff. Aura does it all. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura's going to give you a 2-week free trial with my link. You're going to be shocked at how much of your private information Aura is going to find for you. Go to aura.com/majority to start your free trial. See how extensive your exposure is. Aura.com/majority. Start your free trial. It is linked in the YouTube and podcast description and on the website. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, David Dayen. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland, trying the patience of our next guest, who has been incredibly patient with us as we were running a little late this morning. David Dayen, executive editor of the American Prospect. David, welcome back to the program. You know, I still remember the days where you were doing like the news for Fire Dog Lake, and I would be like, he must not sleep. And
Well, look,
stuff.
it's that time all over again. We got a super committee. We're talking about budget cuts, Social Security cuts. Everything's coming up. 2011 here.
It really is, and Zintz is also that guy. I mean, that's also and
Is it Zeitz or Zintz? We got to know.
It's Zions.
Zions. Okay. All right.
Well, I call him Zintz, so I don't care.
A lot of good that's going to do.
Derogatory.
It's casual Friday. You can call him whatever you want.
Let's start with him. I mean, and I should just say, I just want to say off the top, you wrote a piece that's going to be in February's American Prospect magazine. I hope everybody by now has signed up and become a subscriber to the
too.
Prospect. But this piece is really important to understand how government works and how it doesn't work. And that it's a great piece. It's a long piece, but I want to talk about that a little bit. But let's start with Zients, because new chief of staff was just officially named today. And tell us about this guy. I will say this. I know he was he was like the COVID czar for Biden. And about a year and a half ago, completely by chance, I just know somebody through somebody else who is like a business person. I don't know that many, but he's
This is
a very
real
successful
cloak and
business.
dagger stuff.
And was
I
just
know
like
somebody
knows
through
this guy.
somebody.
I never brought it up because it was sort of like, once, but it knew this guy and was just like, ugh. Like, I mean, he's not even qualified even in the business world, it feels like. But tell us about him.
Well, Jeffrey Zients has been someone who's been sort of around Democratic policy circles since the Obama administration. He was on 2 occasions acting director of the Office of Management and Budget. He became he got this aura of being known as a real efficiency expert and Mr. Fix-It, mainly because they brought him in when healthcare.gov was failing in 2013, maybe 2014, perhaps. And the thing fixed itself. But apparently what he did, why he has this sort of refracted glory, is that he, hired people who fixed healthcare.gov. Like he managed the process whereby other people fixed it, and then he got the credit for it. That seems to be the issue.
Yeah.
That rose him to prominence.
And he comes from a consulting background, right? Which is, I think, a very important way to understand his ideology, because he was pro-TPP, seemingly cuts to social spending in the middle of that fight in 2011, 2012. And when you're an efficiency guy who's the chief of staff for a president who sometimes has had that proclivity to, he was in favor of those cuts. That's what's deeply concerning, to me at least.
Yeah, I mean, as we just said, we're back in this position with a looming debt limit, with Republicans taking over the House and wanting to use these leverage opportunities to cut spending, maybe cut Social Security spending, Medicare spending. This is like where you need, in the words of The Godfather, a wartime consigliere, right? This is the moment where you need a real fighter, because you're going to be in these high stakes negotiations. And the last time that we saw a Democratic president and a Republican House, same situation, Zients was at the forefront of it, and particularly at the forefront of all these budget cuts. We dug up a press event from April 2013, and this was right after the fiscal cliff negotiations, where the automatic cuts eventually went into place through the sequester, and then the tax. The Bush tax cuts were expiring, but then most of them were made permanent at that time. And Zients was just lauding the fact that we had engaged in trillions of dollars of deficit reduction. Of course, what we know now is that stunted the growth and return of employment and economic growth. We had a 9-year trajectory where we didn't get back to the same employment levels as we had prior to the Great Recession. And the fact that the recovery was way too meager was a big part of that. And Zients was a big part of that. So I mean, my concern is kind of that there's, I've heard from a lot of people that he's not going to disrupt the trajectory that the Biden administration is on. He's an implementer. He's not going to input his ideology. This is what I've heard from people who, are in a position to know. But there's a different tenor. Implementation is super important. We've talked about it a lot. That mostly happens at the agency level. The White House can sort of put pressure, but it does mostly happen among the agencies. But there's this big looming fight out there that I think is going to be the major thing that the White House is going to be dealing with for the next 6 months. And having someone who was a corporate executive who ran a conglomerate that was not unlike Warren Buffett's conglomerate at a place called the Cranmere Group, which had some run-ins with Medicare fraud. I'm not sure that this is super ideal, especially given that Klain kind of set a standard of being a pretty good chief of staff.
I've heard that he's a really nice guy, though. Let's put this clip. This is from. It's been a long time. I didn't even know they were still doing their show. But Pod Save America. And, this is, let's play this clip. And this is sort of the most disturbing type of commentary, in my estimation, like where somebody sort of has a personal relationship and just found him pleasant around the office.
Gov. There's the criticism from progressives are saying Jeff is too close to the business community. He made money in healthcare and the private sector. They're concerned about that focus. I think those are very fair things to raise and to point out. But I also know that when we worked with him, he fought for increases in minimum wage, overtime pay. And I also think that Jeff will think that his job is to implement the Biden agenda. He's not coming in there with some determination to advance some, corporate interest that is more important to him. No, he's there to serve Joe Biden.
Yeah. If Jeff Zients ends up helping Biden make a bunch of pro-corporate decisions, then the criticism is well warranted. I generally have a problem with criticism that is only about someone's past and resume and not about the actual decisions and policies they have implemented during their time in government. I think those should be a subject of criticism. And like in terms of Jeff, not only did he oversee the NEC during some of Obama's most progressive economic policies, the push for some of the most progressive economic policies, he ran the Biden transition and helped hire some of the more progressive people in the Biden administration. Pramila Jayapal, who runs the Congressional Progressive Caucus, she talked to Semaphore about this. She said, we really appreciated Jeff's collaboration on COVID policies, on the American Rescue Plan, which both included bold and progressive policies. Yep. So you see the actual progressives in Congress are feeling pretty good about him. You get some lefty activists and media types who are upset, but that's be fair. Expected.
Hey, listen, I think it's good, like voice these things now and then hold them accountable. I also,
Okay. So did the COVID stuff really work out that well? I mean, here's the point.
That is interesting because it sort of elided that. I forgot he did run the NEC during Obama's time in government, but I have heard the same thing about he wasn't in charge of the transition, but he was involved in the transition, involved in some of the hiring, and certainly we saw to some degree. Some decent,
but let me ask you this: but in terms of the role of the chief of staff, right? Klain was there, like it seems to me, on day one or prior to day one, in terms of like being the chief of staff.
Yeah.
Will you explain to people what the chief of staff does? Because it's not the idea that the chief of staff is just implementing Biden's policy, but not in any way shaping it. It seems to me to be not true. I mean, just the position itself, it changes depending on who the person is, but the idea that Klain didn't make a difference. The Klain was just there, you could have put anybody in there, and to the extent that there are good things that come out of the Biden administration, completely irrelevant to that, Ron Klain. That seems to me to be very hard to believe.
It's different in every White House, right? I mean, the power dynamics of every White House change depending on the personalities of the people involved. Klain obviously was someone who had the respect and the authority to really dictate a lot of the politics that the White House engaged in. And he had good relationships with sort of every faction of the Democratic Party and listened to them and took their advice and played it out. It changes. It depends. Someone like obviously Rahm Emanuel was a chief of staff, and he was a big personality and meant a lot to the ways in which the Obama administration at that time engaged in tactics. During these debt limit and fiscal cliff negotiations, Bill Daley, who was a J.P. Morgan Chase executive, was the chief of staff for the White House. And I think that the desire for a grand bargain, is reflected in Daley's concerns and interests. You can have other chiefs of staff. Certainly like under Trump, the chief of staff really didn't matter. It was like a name. Reince Priebus wasn't really getting a lot done in the Trump White House. So it depends on the various personalities involved. The claim is that Zients is just going to be, a functionary, right? He's
right. But
his opinions aren't going to matter at all. I find that a little hard to believe.
It's ridiculous. And the idea that the critique is not based on his record is a straw man that they were putting up there in Pod Save America. The critique is, of course, his record. You mentioned the COVID stuff. He oversaw the complete bungling of the response during the Omicron wave, didn't order extra PPP. And then you can go back and critique him on his role in the Obama administration, a more pro-austerity, more pro-deficit hawkery member of that staff. So no one's critiquing him because he has an associate. I mean, that's, I think, informative that he was a part of of corporate America and big business. The critique is on his record primarily.
And I don't think you have to go to his corporate past to have concerns.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes.
And isn't there also, like, aren't we also talking about, the chief of staff is the primary filter for what the president sort of like, the information, the meetings, the people that the president gets. It seems to me that, like, you can make that filter determines, who's coming in to the office, like what information Biden's getting, how Biden perceives what's going on outside. It's like if I put a red gel on the window of the White House, he's looking out. Biden's gonna be like, this seems a little bit red out there. Or I put a blue one. It's like, hey, things are looking a little chillier out there. Like that makes a big difference.
It's like saying that Bradley doesn't matter, right?
Historically, chiefs of staff are somewhat gatekeepers. That also changes from White House to White House. I know there are some big personalities in this White House. The staff secretary is someone who literally hands the paper and gets it on the Resolute desk, and that is Neera Tanden in this White House. So there are gatekeepers at various levels that you have to deal with. During the Obama administration, the National Economic Council director, when it was Larry Summers, was very much the gatekeeper there. And by the way, the NEC is probably changing. Brian Deese is leaving. There's talk of Lael Brainerd, who is at the Fed right now and is pretty respected there, coming over, which is probably bad for Fed policy more than it is good for the NEC. Right. But you have this jumble, right? And ultimately, someone who Biden has a close relationship is going to get more authority there. And Biden worked hand in hand with Zients. He entrusted the transition to him. He worked with him when he was in the White House in the in the Obama administration, particularly on fiscal cliff and economic policies. Biden was the liaison between the White House and Congress on a lot of those deals. And so, and what we know about his instincts, Biden's instincts, was one of giving up the farm. I mean, giving away leverage that Congress thought they had, Democrats in Congress thought they had at that time. And so, it's not just so much Zients coming in, but this pairing, of when we're going into this negotiation. And you're right, though, that there is this gatekeeper function. And so, what we're going to hear out of this White House is it could be somewhat different.
Let's talk a little bit about you've written two stories over the past. Well, I don't know. I mean, probably a third or fourth that I haven't read yet over the past, 48 hours. But you did one story on how Chuck Schumer managed to sink two really what seemed to be pretty important bills. The American Innovation and Choice Online Act and the Open Markets Act. Tell us what those bills are, and then it is one. half of a coin in terms of like what's been happening for the last 2 years in the during the Biden era. We're entering into a new era, really, in terms of, it seems to me, both because we don't have the legislative opportunities, and on some level, the agencies are ramping up, are finally now like hitting their full stride, which you write about in this other piece, A Pitched Battle on Corporate Power. Talk about the Schumer deep sixing these bills, and then we'll talk about the other.
So there were two bills. These were basically tech platform focused bills, looking at the power, concentrated power of these giants. One, the American Innovation and Choice Online Act, had a few items to a few elements to it, but the big one was to prevent what is called self-preferencing, which is when a Google or an Amazon puts their products ahead of rivals on their own platform and essentially favors their own products. That would have been banned by ICOA.
That's like a platform analogy to net neutrality in many respects.
Yeah, it's a common carrier non-discrimination kind of rule. Yes. The Open App Markets Act is similar to that. It's around mobile apps, and there are certain rules that app developers have to abide by on both Google and Apple's phones and their app stores. They have to give a large percentage of their money that they make in in-app purchases to these gatekeepers as kind of a toll booth kind of situation. And that would be stopped by the Open App Markets Act. So these were two of the biggest potential bills to change antitrust law, to try to mitigate the power of the tech platforms. And these had broad bipartisan support. At one point, Chuck Grassley, who was the co-sponsor of ICOA, said he had over 20 Republicans on the Senate side in support of it. Everyone involved, pretty much to a person, except for Chuck Schumer, says that if these bills were put on the floor in the Senate, they would have passed. And similarly in the House was waiting to see if the Senate could get the 60 votes that it needed to pass these things. They passed out a committee with broad bipartisan support, and everyone was waiting for them to get a floor vote, at which Chuck Schumer promised in early summer of last year. He said they're going to get a vote in the summer. And he essentially ran out the clock. And I sort of recreate the timeline of this from that point in early summer of last year. And at every step of the way, you see Schumer just not putting this thing on the floor, even though the votes were there. And he ran out the clock. And now we see today that House Republicans have taken Ken Buck, who was the strongest sort of antitrust enforcement individual in the House caucus. They took him off of the chairmanship of the House Antitrust Subcommittee and put on Thomas Massey, a libertarian who's in bed with big tech. So this is the end, as we kind of suspected, of these bills having a shot. And the reason that they're not going to go forward, and the reason that big tech is going to maintain its hold and its power is because, first of all, $270 million that the industry spent to stop this, but primarily to target one person, and that's Chuck Schumer.
And Chuck Schumer, I mean, where does his fealty to these companies come from?
Well, I mean, there's a lot you can say. He has two daughters, one of whom works as a lobbyist at Amazon, and the other who works as a marketing manager at Facebook.
What? No, David.
But
you don't think that they influence his decision making? I mean, and let's be clear. I just want to be clear here. This is not a question of he's doing this because it's going to enrich his daughters. I don't think. Even just like in the most generous assessment is, this is what he hears on a daily basis. Dad, they don't get it. We need this ability to do this, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't even know
if it goes that far. Like the Open App Markets Act is about Apple and Google, and his daughters work for Facebook and Amazon, right? I mean, there's something about this whole industry that Schumer wants to protect. And what we know is that 80 members of Schumer's staff have gone on to directly or indirectly work for big tech platforms or their law firms or their lobbying engines. Just this month, the chief counsel to Schumer went to Aiken Gump, which is a law firm that he went to the lobby shop of Aiken Gump, a law firm that counts Amazon as one of its biggest clients. Schumer was spotted over the summer up in the Seattle area, where he met with Microsoft's Brad Smith, the president and CEO, about this particular bill. He controls, and I think this is probably the bigger thing, but we don't know the extent of it. We know that Schumer gets a lot of money from the tech industry, but what we don't know is how much money goes into the dark money super PAC that the Senate controls, the Senate Democrats control. It's called Majority Forward. And there was $100 billion or $100 million in that particular fund. And we don't know where any of it came from. But you can bet that there's probably either a lot of money from the tech industry flowing into that, or a lot of threats that if you don't play ball and not put this bill on the floor, we're going to put a lot of money into your counterpart. We're going to put a lot of money into Mitch McConnell's dark money PAC. And the same threats, implied threats, were made to senators up for reelection, which made them a little bit more, loath to take a vote on these bills.
Definitely worth a read for folks, again, to sort of watch this dynamic where someone could say, like, I definitely am supportive of this bill, and then all of a sudden, like, we just didn't have the time to get to it.
The quote that Schumer gave me is quite amazing, where he says he believes in this and he's not going to give up.
Right.
Like, you have the ability to put the bill on the floor for 6 months. What do you mean you're not going to give up?
He's not going to give up. He's not going to give up, David. That's what he's not going to give up. This is like anybody who works in like middle management in some corporation knows like the name of this game, which is like, I'm definitely going to get to it. And then just like, I'm definitely, oh God, you know what? I tried to, but we had a snafu down in, the guys at R&D were.
There was one amazing moment. There was one amazing moment that I'll quickly explain here, which is that at the end, in the lame duck session, they were trying to insert these bills into the must-pass organs, like the omnibus spending bill. Nobody was going to object if that got stuck in there. Nobody was going to take down the spending bill because of one of these measures. And it started. There's a process where the Judiciary Committee ranking member and chair have to clear the bill to say, okay, you can put that in the omnibus. And they did that for the Open App Markets Act. And a tweet went out from Emily Birnbaum, who's Politico's reporter on these tech issues, saying, according to Schumer's office, Mitch McConnell killed the Open App Markets Act. And about 5 minutes later, that tweet was taken down and replaced with a tweet that said, according to sources familiar with the negotiation,
oops,
Mitch McConnell abandoned the bill. It just, to everyone I talked to, that was sort of an aha moment, that the fact that they sloppily put their name to try to finger Mitch McConnell, point him as the culprit, and then took it off very rapidly, was it was very clear who was stage managing the process and who was gaslighting this whole time.
All right, let's turn to another piece that it's a big piece, and I want to try and sum it up. But it basically starts with Joe Biden back in the middle of 2021 signing a. It's not even quite an executive order per se, or is it an executive order?
Yeah,
I guess
it's an executive order. Yeah.
72 different actions. What were the nature of these actions?
So this was an executive order to promote competition in the U.S. economy. It came out of years of work from anti-monopoly reformers, people like Lena Khan and Jonathan Cantor and Tim Wu, who up until just about a couple of weeks ago was the lead at the National Economic Council on competition policy, and this was his baby. This executive order, he basically put this thing together, and the idea was to adopt a whole of government approach to completely changing the way in which, over the last 40 years, the government has perceived competition in the economy. It was sort of welcomed. It was said that government should have a light hand in intervening in these markets. And what Wu and these reformers have said is that no, actually, what we need to do is government needs to use its authority, use its power to make sure that competition is fostered within the economy, and that monopoly power is broken down. And so these 72 actions, some of them are reports, some of them are encouraging agencies to take certain regulatory action. It depends on whether it's a cabinet agency or an independent agency, whether you can say you can direct them to do something, or you can say, well, please do something, essentially. And what I wanted to know a year and a half after this thing was put into the world is what got done, and and really has the mindset changed, where all agencies across the government are viewing these large businesses more skeptically and viewing the need for some competition within these sectors as a real priority. And it was really interesting to dig into this, because I went out to every agency that was mentioned in this directive, and every one of them, except for I think one, got back to me, which is very rare as a reporter. Like, that does not happen.
Well, I want to get into what you found, but what's also fascinating about your story is not just like sort of what material things happened because of it, but also what it means to elect a president, generically speaking, and what it means, we were told during the Obama years that progressives had this notion of like the Green Lantern theory, that the president has this magical power to change things, and that is
no, that he doesn't. I mean,
right, that he doesn't. Right, yeah. But that supposedly progressives felt that he did have a magical power, and in fact he doesn't. You're all imagining these things, and we know, and I had interviewed I think all of those people at one time or another, including yourself, who wrote a book on monopolies. That the laws existed on the books since the Reagan era. Well, prior to that, but since the Reagan era,
1890s, yeah.
And it was Reagan's sort of like Borkian perspective that just sort of changed the perspective on all these laws, and essentially changed what defined antitrust in as the rubber meets the road. And this was, at the very least, an attempt to go back to the prior understanding of what antitrust was it's not just about our consumers getting a cheaper price. It's about competition, broadly speaking, and the implications not just for the consumer in the short term in terms of prices, but in terms of services and variety of things, and wages for workers, and political power throughout our society.
And you're right to point out that it was about rediscovering the rather mundane fact that who is president matters, right? like that a president's opinion can actually move out across the government, including independent agencies, and change their approach. And that has been true to some extent, and it's also met resistance in some agencies, like the Department of Transportation, like the Department of Health and Human Services, like USDA to some extent. But it really has made progress in other facets. Government's sort of not a monolith, right? I mean, there are differing opinions, there's different resistance, but the fact that the president was on board with this, the fact that he showed up to every meeting of the Competition Council, which has been put together to sort of, monitor the actions that are being taken, and the fact that every agency comes to that meeting and the president's sitting there and he's like, "What have you done?" And they have to have an answer for that. It's created this positive dynamic where we are seeing real changes being made. And some of the changes are not even in the executive order. They're just things that are happening. I'll give you 2 examples of that.
All right, well, I want you to give me. I want you to give me those examples. But before we do, and I know this is sort of like arguably like rudimentary, but I'm fascinated by this dynamic. What is different between an agency that is resistant to adopting this perspective and it filter through all the things that they do, one that is really gung ho, and one that is sort of like agnostic, but reacts to it?
I mean, what is the difference? I mean, I think there's one is leadership. That's one reason why it could be different. You have a little tiny agency like the Surface Transportation Board, which is this small agency that governs the railroads. And it actually has been really, really successful in engaging in rulemaking and cracking down, forcing the railroads to serve their customers better. Trying to change this trajectory where the rail industry has for years throttled capacity to try to boost their own profits. This was described to me as like the model agency for how this works. And they're not a cabinet agency, right? They're an independent body. And then you have like a sprawling agency like the Department of Transportation, which has its hands in a million different things, or HHS, which governs Medicare and the FDA and all these other different departments. And there are pockets in those agencies that are like, no, this is the way we've done things for years and years and years. It's the way we've done things since I've been here, and I, bureaucrat, matter more than the president of the United States and his directive on these particular issues. And so you see it. I mean, even sometimes within the same agency, like look at the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. So at one level, they have done these incredible investments in the fertilizer industry, in small meat packing agents, processors, to try to, get rid of these seed and agricultural giants that are dominating our food system. At another level, the Department of Justice sued to block a sugar monopoly, and the chief economist of the USDA testified on behalf of the sugar companies. This is one agency testifying essentially against another within the government to say that these 2 sugar agencies, companies that would merge and create a real monopolistic giant, they're going to be fine. So sometimes it's even within the same agency. But what the other thing that's important about this is I think this executive order really emboldened the new team at the main antitrust agencies, right? The Lena Khan at the FTC, Jonathan Cantor at the Department of Justice Antitrust Division. It backed up what they wanted to do. And it gave sort of presidential level support to the very hard and radical things that they were trying to accomplish. And I don't think you see, like, for example, what we saw this month with a proposed ban on non-compete agreements at the FTC without this executive order saying, we want you to do this.
So this gives a green light for people who are already on board with that sort of antitrust program, gives them a green light, and it provides a little bit of heft when they go to other agencies and say, guys, you got to do it this way. And the implication is like, you're either, the president's going to be upset. The president wants this. And if it doesn't happen, you're going to be upset. You mentioned
for a smaller agency, it gives them a source of support that they can point to with the industry. What Tim Wu said to me is like, he would go to agencies and say, we want to propose this. And they would say, well, that's a landmine. And he would say, well, give us your landmine, right? We'll do it through an executive order. And then you can say, the president wanted to do that, have the industry go to them, right? So we'll take on the landmines.
This is the salesman saying like, it's my manager says I can't do it. And so I'm sorry, I would give you the free AC, but my manager says we can't do it. Transportation, there's a lot of pressure on Pete Buttigieg to do something about the airline industry. Yeah. Time and time and time again, there was multiple occasions for him to do it. He didn't do it. This Southwest, was it? I think,
yes.
Huge fiasco.
Yeah.
And then just the other day, I noticed Lena Khan's chief of staff moves over there.
Yes.
How should we read that? Like, what is that? What is the message there? Is it Pete Buttigieg realizing like, oh crap, this is like, I need to make it look like I'm doing something because I want to run for president someday? Or is it the White House saying, you got to do something because this is hurting us and we're sending somebody over there who knows what to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can read it in both of those ways. Obviously, this has become something of a vulnerability for both the White House, but more important for Secretary Pete. This is a vulnerability for him. The Department of Transportation, huge agency, a lot of entrenchment in their way of thinking. I report in this story that a consumer advocate who was in a discussion with agency officials said, well, why aren't you trying to ban these fees? There's this movement across the government to ban junk fees, like fees on a glass of water, or fees on printing out your boarding pass. That's an actual fee at some airlines like Spirit. Why don't you ban these junk fees? And the officials said back to this consumer advocate, well, that would be a departure for the department. That would be a huge departure. So, I mean, this stuff predates Buttigieg, frankly. I mean, secretaries of both parties have done essentially nothing to stop the power and dominance of the airlines and their willingness to rip off customers. And so, putting Jen Howard, who was Lena Khan's chief of staff, she also worked closely with Rohit Chopra when he was at the FTC and previously at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, putting her as chief competition officer with, an eye toward, these consumer protection issues at the airlines, I think does signal like, okay, well, we tried it the first way, which is just, putting out an executive order and telling them to do a bunch of things. Now we got to bring in our own person and maybe, get a new perspective there, a new way of thinking, and maybe that'll shake things up.
How much can the Department of Transportation do with these kinds of things? I mean, the fee thing you bring up, but a lot of this you can trace back to the Airline Deregulation Act of 78.
No.
Congress has to act, obviously, and Buttigieg is not acting enough, obviously. But what can Buttigieg be doing? Yeah.
Well, you look at what the FTC just did on non-competes. The reason that they have the authority to do that is what it's called Section 5 authority. And that is the fact that the FTC has the ability to make rules and enforcement on any unfair and deceptive practices within industries under which they oversee. And so they can write a rule and saying XYZ is an unfair and deceptive practice, and we're going to ban it. Or you company are engaged in an unfair and deceptive practice, and we're going to fine you for it. Well, it turns out the Department of Transportation has the exact same statute with the exact same language as the FTC. So if the airlines are scheduling an unreasonable number of flights that they know that they can't service because they don't have enough staff to run those planes, and then they cancel those flights, that could easily be seen as an unfair and deceptive practice by the airline industry. In fact, we learned this week that the Department of Transportation is investigating Southwest, and they're investigating Southwest over that very issue, that the unreasonable scheduling was an unfair and deceptive practice. And so this pressure that has been put on the agency is starting to work, and they're starting to see what their power is. And that unfair and deceptive practice rule gives the department a tremendous amount of power to not just force disclosure in fees, like transparency. Oh, so I know I'm getting ripped off, so that I feel better about it. They can stop these things. They can stop these practices, and we'll see if they do it.
How durable is this shift? In other words, coming in, it seems to me that there were two major, maybe three major pushes or forces within the Biden administration that were sort of like both manifested in individuals and also sort of like movement. And that was antitrust, largely championed by sort of like Warrenites, labor largely championed by Sanderites, and then climate, which was sort of like a broad sort of understanding within the Democratic Party. And it seems to me those three areas have been we've seen the most happen in those areas, right? Like the National Labor Relations Board has become much stronger. The antitrust, we're talking to you about it, but we've been following that. We're seeing some real move. And the IRA, to some extent, the Inflation Reduction Act, dealt with at least maybe the minimum, but at least some level of climate, addressing climate issues. Yeah. Woefully insufficient, but within the context of what was available legislatively. How durable is it? And is there an administration that could come in afterwards? How hard would it be for, let's say, the Trump administration to come in and reverse this, let's say, the antitrust ideology, if you will, that shifts these agencies? Or is it once you get into a certain track, there has to be an extraordinary amount of effort to sort of like shift that trajectory?
Well, it's a very good question. I would say just as it takes a long time to move the trajectory of the ship of state, it takes just as long to move that back. In certain things like climate and labor, if you build a solar manufacturing plant, you have the plant, right? And you're going to keep going with it. If you, what we've seen with the NLRB is that these things they whipsaw back and forth every time. I think that's less durable, actually. Some of these NLRB decisions, but if Trader Joe's organizes, then that's organized, and hopefully we get out of Starbucks and Amazon and Trader Joe's and some of these other places, we get actual contracts. That's the next step. With antitrust, I think that there is a mindset change, right? And once that mindset changes, just as the Biden administration has seen some resistance among some agencies to change their views, I think the Trump administration would have similar difficulties, or DeSantis or whoever it is. There's also the fact that there's at least some bipartisan interest in these issues, and it's kind of when the rubber meets the road is when you see if Republicans are really interested in this. But I do think there's, at least rhetorically, some desire to keep these things up. And I'll give you a last example, because some of this stuff is happening in places that is so buried and so sort of under the surface that no president is going to figure out what the change even happened before it happens. Here's the example. So the U.S. Forest Service, of all places, engaged in one of the biggest anti-monopoly actions of the past several months. There's this stuff called fire retardant, which is like the red gooey stuff that comes out of a plane when they're trying to suppress a big wildfire. And there's one company that makes all of it. The product is called Phos-Chek. The company is called Perimeter Solutions. And it turns out that at the U.S. Forest Service, there's this thing called the Qualified Product List, or QPL, which is essentially a certification process for this retardant actually works, right? And this is what you should buy. And not only states and municipalities are sort of required to go by the QPL, even other countries use the QPL as this is what we're going to buy. For 22 years, there was only one company on that QPL. There was only one product that was able to be bought by states and cities. And just in December, the U.S. Forest Service put a new company on that list, and instantly creating double the number of competitors and hopefully creating a virtuous situation where, there'll be some actual competition within this tiny, tiny market. Where cities and states, because there was only one company and total monopoly, were being ripped off. So that's an example. Like, the Trump administration isn't going to come in and get rid of the second company on the QPL of the U.S. Forest Service list. They might do it eventually, but it's not going to be the first thing on their list, right?
Saw Dayen
and there are many
on the Majority
things like
Report.
that.
The QPL, get on it. First thing.
Exactly. It's just not going to happen. And so some of this stuff happens at such sort of a sub agency level that it's going to stay in place, and it's going to be important, even though it's obscure.
David Dayen, you, the American Prospect, national treasures, completely protected from the from a DeSantis or DeTrumpus or whatever that administration comes in. The durability there is amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. We will put links to all the pieces we talked about today at majority.fm and in the podcast and YouTube description. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks, David.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk to another American institution in just a moment.
Another American David.
Another American David, another American institution in just a moment. David Feldman will be with us. We got to take oh, wait, no, we don't need to take a break. He's on the phone. Oh, he's on the phone. Oh, okay. All right. Hold on for 1 second. I didn't know. I should say, that it's Friday, and I just called in. Andy Kindler, Judy Gold couldn't make it. And so, you know what that means? We have David Feldman. And if you just give me a moment, for those lucky enough to have no idea who David Feldman is, he's the host of the David Feldman Show, which you cannot hear on iHeart Radio, if I remember correctly. And for some reason, his podcast isn't distributed by iHeart Radio. Let me get him on. So you might want to consider, as I have, using the iHeart Radio app to make absolutely sure that you don't. That's actually how I listen to my favorite radio station. And one of the benefits is that there's no way that the David Feldman Show is going to accidentally start playing, when I'm driving the kids to skateboarding or soccer practice or whatever it is, because it's really difficult for young people or old people, for that matter, to unhear what David Feldman tries to pass off as entertainment. So fasten your seatbelts, folks, mostly around your neck. That's a little, I just thought you might appreciate that.
Yeah.
Squeeze real tight. David Feldman, welcome back to the program, as we didn't have the availability of other people.
Wow. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you. Welcome to the show.
Okay. So you're not going to let go of it.
I'm not sure I follow. Let go of what?
All right. The joke, I stole a joke, what was it, 15 years ago from you?
And
you're not going to let go?
I have no idea what you're talking
about. You don't
let go? Absolutely no idea. None.
Sure you don't. Sure. I know.
I honestly, I genuinely have no idea what you're talking about.
I was on the Rosie O'Donnell show. Bobby Collins was guest hosting. You don't remember that?
I mean, that man, not maybe a little bit.
Back in 1999? And I
remember the year.
And I accidentally did your bit about Bill Clinton telling Monica Lewinsky, what was it, like close but no cigar, or something like that. You don't remember your bit that I accidentally pinched?
I do not remember the joke, to be honest with you. I don't even know what that joke would have been referencing.
Close but no cigar. Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton. You don't remember your bit that I accidentally took.
I'm not even sure. In '99, I was even like in clubs at that time.
Wow. Well, okay. All right. And you didn't call Rosie's producer and say David Feldman's a joke thief, right? You didn't call me screaming. You don't remember? You called me a joke thief, and then you called my mother, and you told her that I'm a joke thief. So I couldn't borrow the car for like a month because you called my mother and said I was a thief. Okay, all right. I offered to pay, but you were so jealous that I was on Rosie's talk show and you weren't, and you were more interested in destroying my career than furthering your own. It somehow seems to have forgotten that.
No, none of this ever happened. I don't know if you're serious, but if you are, you're delusional.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
Okay. All right.
So, David, it's just like palate cleansing. Lot going on now in the 118th Congress, as you know. George Santos, Marjorie Taylor Greene sitting in the Homeland Security. Mike Pence is like...
must be nice. It must be so nice. It must be so nice to be you, Sam. It must be so wonderfully nice to be Sam Seder. Must be so nice.
Well, David, I'll tell you, I'm not sure why you're saying that at the moment, but yes, thank you. It is.
So nice. So nice. It must be nice to live in that bubble of privilege that you and Emma have carved out for yourself. You and Emma, such a lovely and leafy rhetorical cul-de-sac with your son Matt. I hear him with your son Matt.
Yeah,
where the tragedies of the world can't find your neighborhood. You should call the Majority Report the Pines with
Wait, the
Sam and
the Pines.
Yeah, the Pines. It's a good name for a gated community, which is what your show is. God forbid your son Matt go to a public school and see how the real people live.
All right, yeah. Matt's not my son. You know that, right?
I also went to public school.
And he went to public school, but he's not my son.
He's not your son. Okay,
No.
that's between you and Emma.
Yeah,
I don't wanna
he's
get
not
into-
my son either, David.
Wait, what?
Okay, so no wonder Matt is so effed up in the head. Instead of the Majority Report, how about calling it the Breakers on the Bay with Sam and Emma? A sanitized iteration of the world in our gated community of a talk show where it never rains, nobody has trouble paying the bills. It must be so nice for you, Sam. It must be so nice.
David,
it must be so nice.
I'm not sure if you heard my intro. I was pushing the David Feldman show. There's a lot going on this
thank
week.
you.
We got tanks in
Thanks
Ukraine. We got body cam footage
Thanks
of
for your
the
charity.
attack on
Thanks
Paul
for the
Pelosi.
charity.
It's not charity. I know you like to discuss
Thanks
these
for the
things, and so I'm not quite sure why you're being this hostile. I was going to bring you on to talk about them.
Okay. All right.
All right.
How about Emerald Bay with Sam and Emma? Emerald Bay on the ocean. Anyone or anything you don't know can't come inside.
Emerald Bay.
That's what your show is. Emerald Bay, a gated community of privilege.
Fine.
I'm an empath.
Is that right?
I feel for those who are suffering, and I wish I had the luxury that you and Emma have to talk about. The debt ceiling, Antifa. I'm not sitting behind the gates, inside Indian Springs Ranch with Sam and Emma.
What is Indian Springs Ranch? I don't
Are
even.
these
your
real
gated-
gated communities, David?
That's a gated community of a show that the two of you have
Okay.
moved into, where you talk politics like it was some sort of backgammon game, in between sidecar cocktails with lemons squeezed right
I mean,
off
that
the
sounds
tree.
nice, but David, I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure where you're going with this.
Is that Emma?
Yes. Yeah. We've been
Oh.
speaking. Everything okay, David?
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for chiming in, Emma. I know how busy you are these days with that. You got that new show of yours promoting online wagering. Right?
Yeah.
Gambling's a disease. You know that, don't you?
David, she's not promoting online gambling.
Sure. That's not. I think that.
I mean, we're
maybe
out.
you don't watch her. Maybe it eats you up inside watching her do a show. But I watch the show. It's online gambling, right? But you're in denial. Okay.
Well,
and Seder
perhaps.
University. Seder University.
Seder
isn't
University.
funded by Yeah, that's not funded by APAC in a partnership with the National Petroleum Institute.
Seder
Right?
University.
Right.
There's
Seder
no
University
Seder
is not-
University. You're thinking of
Right.
Prager
Not-
University.
No, Seder University, I've read the 501c3, okay? It's funded by billionaires. Your Seder University is funded by billionaires who pay you to pepper the videos with, that state-of-the-art After Effects crap, so you can sneak in subliminal propaganda in support of, what is it you're pushing, the neoliberal world order these days?
Yeah,
What effect did you
latest-
see, David?
Well, first off, dude, are you
That's
all
your
right?
son? Why isn't your son in school? Isn't today a school day?
It's not my son. There is no Cedar
calling
University.
child-
Matt is not my son.
calling-
Emma's not pushing
This is
online
child
gaming.
abuse.
You're
This
there.
is child abuse. Matt, are you safe? You feel
Look.
safe, Matt?
David. Matt is not my son. He is not being abused.
That
Emma's
worked.
not doing online and there is no Seder University or Cedar University for that matter.
Cedar. There is no. You're right. Thank you for. That's the first honest thing you've said all day.
Well, it's the third time I've said it too.
Yeah, and there is no Cedar University because you sold the entire catalog of videos to Hillsdale College. The private conservative Christian.
No, I know what Hillsdale College is.
In Hillsdale, yeah. Do your listeners even know that Cedar University is now part of Hillsdale College and you're funded by the ultra right-wing conservative Christians?
I doubt they know that
pretend-
because it's not true. And so why would they know that any more than they would know that there was a Feldman University?
Yeah, well, there's, I wonder how the conservative Christians who fund your show would feel if they knew that you were in league with Emma, who's hosting a show that promotes the sin of gambling. I don't think the people from Hillsdale College would look too kind. Gambling's a sin, Emma.
Well, it's not about gambling, David. It's about sports, not gambling. I mean, it's about sports. David?
Tell that to your maker.
Oh.
Tell that to your maker. Don't tell that to me. Tell that to your maker. I've watched the show, and you cater to addicts. You tell your viewers how to wager on football games with no. You told me to take the Giants, Emma, and my cat is eating cat food now because of you. You told me to take the Giants, and now. Martin,
David, I mean, your cat should be eating cat food, but because of me, your cat's eating cat food now.
I trusted you, and Martin is now eating cat food because you told me to take the Giants, and now Martin and I have to cut back, and he's eating cat food.
David, that's not what her show is about. She's a Giants fan.
You should have known not to trust the Giants' recommendation.
Right, exactly.
It's a disease. You're promoting a disease. Gambling is a sickness. And Sam, are you still here, Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah, you of all people should know that gambling is a disease. And
Wait,
I don't want
what?
to bring it up.
Me?
Yeah, I don't want to bring it up, but you of all people should know that gambling is a disease.
What
You of all
are
people.
you
Want me to bring it up? Do you want me to bring it up? Because I will. Growing up in Englewood, New Jersey, I'm going to say it, and I'm sure you're going to cut me off, but Sam's father always had a new car, the big vacations, the huge house.
Yeah.
You
know what? I am going to cut you off. I did not grow up in Englewood, New Jersey. I did not grow up in New Jersey. I grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up in Massachusetts. I don't even know where Englewood, New Jersey is.
5 families your father had, and you were always happy when I was growing up. And I asked my mother, why can't the Feldmans have the nice things that the Cedars and have? Why are they always going on vacations? And you know what? My father, I'm going to tell the truth, Sam, and I'm sure you'll cut me off. My father sat me down and explained that Sam's father was a degenerate gambler. And that he was very. Your father was sick. He couldn't stop. He was always coming home from Atlantic City, tipping your friends.
Ever been to Atlantic City? I don't think he's ever been to Atlantic City.
Your father would tip me. I'd shake his hand. He'd slip me a 50.
My father has never met you.
It was sick. Gambling is sick. It ruins lives. Martin, my cat, is forced to eat cat food because Emma told me to take the Giants.
Now, David, this is all moot. It's a sports show. We talk about unions. We talk about concussions. We talk about systemic racism. Yeah.
Concussions. You're telling people how to bet on concussions? That's what it's come to? This is what sports gambling has come to? I can place a bet now on whether or not Brock Purdy's going to catch chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Is that what
that is not.
I can bet.
That is not what the show's about, and that's just not true, David.
Sure, it's like wow. I'm surprised I haven't been cut off yet.
You know what? Let me cut you off for a second because I have absolutely no idea what is going on with you right now.
Yeah, you don't in your gated community. Yeah, in Whispering Oaks with Sam and Emma.
Governor of Georgia has, I don't even know why I'm trying to talk about the state of emergency. We're going to be talking actually about what's going on in Georgia about this environmental activists.
Is she going to give the over under on the riots in Georgia? Is that like you can place bets now? Is that
David? I don't know what's going on. You're attacking Emma because she does a show in sports. You think that I grew up in New Jersey and you have these fever dreams of my father.
Hey, I'm not attacking Emma. I am passing judgment on her.
Oh, good.
And your show, I'm passing judgment on your listeners and members of your faith, Sam. Members of
my faith? What faith? I don't have a faith.
Arms akimbo.
What are you talking about?
I accuse. I'm passing judgment on your faith.
I don't have. What faith?
You don't have a faith?
I don't have a faith.
College. Yeah,
what?
You and your Hillsdale College buddies aren't breeding Red Bulls down in Texas and then shipping those Red Bulls to Israel in order to facilitate the second coming of Jesus? You don't know anything about that? You don't know anything about your breeding? Yeah, how you're breeding Red Bulls?
Red Bulls? Like the drink? Like, what are you talking about?
No, the cattle, the Red Bulls, Galatians 3. And the cherry-colored cattle shall signal to our Lord, his time is upon us. I know what you're up to. Your listeners don't know how you're facilitating the apocalypse with the Red Bulls.
Literally,
so
my first question for you was, or the second question was going to be about Elise Stefanik and her endorsement of George Santos, basically biting her in the ass. That was what my first. I don't know where.
Biting her in the what? In the what? Biting her in the what?
Biting her in the ass.
What? Language, Sam. I know you're a free speech absolutist, but I don't appreciate the word ASS, okay?
You don't appreciate the word ASS? That's very surprising because that's exactly how I would describe you at this moment.
Really? And there's Emma laughing. Yeah, laugh at me. Shame on you, Emma. A new day is coming, okay? A day is coming when all of you will stand before the pearly gates of heaven,
This is
and
a threat.
all of us will be shown our receipts and be forced to answer for them. Okay,
Yeah. So,
Sam?
David,
right.
what do you say? Should we discuss Jeff Zients? Biden's new chief of staff. We just spoke about him with Dave.
It's maniacal.
Wow. Wait. Emma.
Yeah.
Let me hang on. I'm sorry to interrupt. What is the name of Biden? This is so great. What is the name of Biden's new chief of staff? What's his name again?
Jeff Zients.
It's pronounced Jeff. It's pronounced Jeff. So I guess you're the ass. You're so busy calling me an ass.
Yeah.
You don't even
You know what?
how to
Actually,
pronounce-
you're an ass.
Jeff,
You're an ass. David.
You're an ass.
You're an
You're
ass.
an ass.
David,
You're an
what is
You're an-
wrong with you?
You're an ass. You're an ass. That's what you are. You're an ass.
What is
You're an
wrong
ass.
with you?
And
honestly.
What
is going on?
What's going on is the Red Bulls are going to Israel because of you and Jesus.
Have you left your house yet, David? Have you been in your house for like 3 years yet? Like, what is going on with you?
You're an ass.
You're an ass. You're an ass. Ass.
No, you're an ass.
Ass.
Oh, he hung up.
My God.
Oof.
Wow.
What
Fun halftime?
is going on with him?
He needs
Help?
Yeah. He needs Jesus or
Yep.
someone. Yeah, shoot. Shouldn't have said that. Let that
You
slip.
know, when we hear about these reports on the heavy metals released by the burning of gas stoves in people's apartments,
Hit the spot, David.
Georgia governor did declare national state of emergency. 1,000 National Guard.
The Georgia?
Yeah. For
Right, of course.
for this cop city. We're going to be talking. I'm interviewing someone this afternoon from.
Yeah, he's a.
Can't hear you.
He's an activist with the against the Cop City development in Atlanta.
And when are we going to play that?
With either next week or in the weeks, definitely in February, probably in early to either next week or the week after.
Okay, maybe Tuesday because we might want to.
Oh yeah,
just run it.
highlight it.
Bump that up.
All right, boy, I don't know what's up with Feldman, but does not seem healthy. Folks, we're going to take a break. Head into the fun half of the program. 646-257-3920 is the number. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only allow the show to survive and thrive, but you also get the free half free of commercials. And then you get the fun half. And then you also have the ability to IM us on the app. Just log in on the app if you're a member. And if you're not a member, you can still use the app. It's a great app, both iOS and Apple. You can find it, iOS and Android, I should say. You can find it at majorityapp.com. We have links there to it. But in the meantime, become a member, jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget, sign up for the AM Quickie. What is it? We're 3 times a week free and 5 times a week if you...
Yeah, two behind the paywall, three free.
There you go.
Yeah.
So check that out. Dave was Phil Spectoring you for sound drops. I have no idea what that was about with Feldman. That was
he's okay.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I hope he's okay too. Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. I should say Matt is not my son. We have no relation. I guess it's technically possible. I probably would have been about 20, 22 when you were born.
1988.
21. Let's not get carried away.
Matt was born in December.
Yeah, 1988, 21, 22. I'd be 22.
I mean, you know.
No, that's
that
not
year
possible.
doesn't
I wasn't
matter that much.
Oh, 22 in December. All right. Well, if he was my child, he would have been born earlier, and then I would have been 21.
28 for me.
All right, let's just calm down, everybody.
30 for me.
Let's calm down. Jesus. Oh, boy. Emma, what's happening on your gambling show?
Yeah, lots of, you know, just really, really debaucherous stuff happening over there. Conference championship weekend in the NFL. Check the show out. We're very excited. Lots of fun. We also talked a bit about Damian Lillard, what his continued tenure with Portland really means for the NBA, and his incredibly clutch and efficient 60-point game. Plus the new hires, Frank Reich, Nathaniel Hackett to the Jets, Bradley is in pain. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
And how to talk to your bookie if he's a MAGA person.
Yeah, that's behind the paywall. That doesn't exist. Anyway, that's it.
Left Reckoning, we got part 2 of our me and David discussing Rosa Luxemburg's Reform and Revolution. That's going to go up for patrons, patreon.com/Left Reckoning on Sunday.
And your merch.
Oh, we have merch too. I don't know what this.
I just
if
saw
you
that
Google it.
your guys' account posted it, so
we are selling lots of merch. You can check out our website for that.
Moleman Dentist Guild says, can you prove that Feldman isn't an AI simulation of a crazy person? I honestly don't know how to describe or to
It would
assess
explain
what-
his stamina for 6-hour broadcasts.
yeah, there you go. 646-257-3920. We'll be right back after this. We'll take your IMs and perhaps your phone calls. See you then.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare! Bring back DJ Denner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males
psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy. Pussy, 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 pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the fun half, the majority report. Alexandria Casio Keyboard says that was the funniest Feldman's been since the time he explained to Emma how Tucker Carlson was playing fourth dimensional diarrhea.
That killed me at that time.
Trader Joe's location in Louisville, Kentucky, writes Sam Tights Pants. Kentucky wins their union vote yesterday, 48-36. First location in the South, third location in total. The latest in a wave of successful union drives in the city, led by Starbucks locations and other coffee brands, pizza chains, Courier Journal, forming their own guild against the media giant Gannett. Exciting developments in a right to work. State's largest city. Interesting.
Nice.
Vermont Bend, no fun half link on YouTube today. Nick Ringler, if David Dayen was a magician, he would be David Blaine. Okay.
It's there.
101 Lawn Gnomes. Tim Ryan announces next job. Fossil fuel lobbyist. Do you think the FTC proposal eliminating non-compete contracts will hinder efforts to curb the lobbying legislator revolving door? Omaha John, Matt loves a colorless show. Custodial artist. Sam, if you don't try and find the GMA interview with Stephanopoulos. I don't get that. Tome of Link. Happy Casual Friday, folks. Here in Britain, there's been another police misconduct scandal which resulted in police forces in England and Wales being ordered to check all individual officers for allegations of abuse, both on and off duty. London's Metropolitan Police Commissioner announced their review. Before the order, the commissioner said that he expects to fire hundreds of officers and he expects 2 to 3 officers per week to be in court for crimes. Also, yesterday, the show was talking about shitty movies. All cats are beautiful. Everyone needs to be ready to bring the same energy we saw during George Floyd protests. These cops are getting arrested. It's not the solution. Mask up. Get outside tonight. Leave your phone at home. Maddie Moron, my partner's from Memphis. She's been talking to her family today, and they've all said the tension's been gathering for days. The cops in this country are just totally rogue, and it will ultimately make more uprisings like the George Floyd rebellion to meet them with such force that the entire power structure around them is required to transform them. Custodial artist, sorry, comment broke. Stephanopoulos, in an interview with Memphis police chiefs, had said it all. I don't know if it's a lack of PR training or if she was actually doing what was right. All cats are beautiful. They're trying to get away with no systemic responsibility by charging these guys immediately. Bingo dango. Yeah, that's a good point. I went traveling in Europe for a couple of weeks last summer and barely saw a single police officer outside the airports. Chardonnay socialist. With so many civilians murdered by cops in this country, often on video, it does seem notable. The first time cops are immediately indicted for murder, they all happen to be black. There is no question the whole system is broken, but if those cops were all white, the system would have made all the usual excuses and tried to move on. Morbid Dentist Guild. Do you mean that there should be no traffic stops or that unarmed civil servants should annoy random American motorists? Yeah, I think you don't need armed officers doing traffic stops.
We have like the previous AM talking about traveling to Europe. Like I was in London, you will see cops with like sort of machine gun type things in certain high embassy type areas. But we're so used to like all of these cowboys driving around fully armed and ability like just to pull their weapon out, and it's a bad mindset. Like we already have the thing called traffic cops. Like those people should just be not armed, and like there shouldn't be any high speed
They can give
chases.
you a civil violation ticket.
Yeah, what's the license plate for besides to say like, here, this is where you send the ticket?
Exactly. The idea that it becomes that traffic stops becomes a form of policing is absurd. It's absurd. There's no correlation between speeding or taking a left turn or this and that, and if everyone knows that these are not police officers, they're just like civil ticket givers, it's not going to create any situations where you have like people, high speed chases and
I got a warrant out. I need to run here. Like, right. I mean,
But they kind of it's a harassment vehicle.
Yes.
I mean, no pun intended.
You see this
So,
with like
yeah.
the marijuana stuff. It's like, well, how are we going to snoop into people's lives
Right.
and figure out if we can arrest them for something bigger?
Oh, it smelled like pot. Yeah.
Jarrett the Jamaican in London. I still can't watch George Floyd video and never watch another cop movie again. They're just propaganda that white Americans accept as reality. Dan the Birdman. New Zealand is experiencing severe weather and flooding for the second time in as many weeks. This is their summer season there. Devoid reality. Dang, Sam, your Paul Harvey is running strong today. Anwar Bear. Forget no collar. Lose the pants like me. Professional dumpster fire. Hey, I'm our crew. Just and FYI, LastPass had their database hacked in November, and it was super bad. While all notes and passwords were encrypted, the URLs of your websites that you use were not. Currently looking into finding a new password manager. I'll have to look into Aura. Millennial Industrial Complex. Haven't heard from Reagan in a while. Is he all right, or did his clients finally get mad that he was always on the phone with you during meetings? Good question. MSNB Seder. Hits breaking news button on the soundboard. Sam has a new shirt. Millennial Industrial Complex. Pod Save guys initially offered a defense of Ronnie Jackson, the Obama doctor, now insane Republican congressman, because he was also a nice guy who took care of them on foreign trips and prescribed drugs pretty loosely. Rick from Georgia, Matt Brunig, put a really good video on his YouTube yesterday explaining how raising the retirement age for Social Security is a euphemism. It's actually just cutting benefits. Of course. Skippy, would you cover Cop City? Like I say, we have an interview this afternoon. Dave from Jamaica, three things killed my spirit. Non-paid Elon Musk fans, bro country music, and Pod Save America. Damian, did you just say the law firm was called Aching Dump? God, I hope so. Amazon servant. I love when Dayen is on. I'm an Amazon third-party seller and just wanted to add that not only does Amazon favor their own products, but they use the third-party sellers as testing grounds so they can find new product ideas to steal. You create a great product, it does well, they take your idea, make a cheaper one, and push you out. Travis from Pittsburgh, are you going to challenge Schumer for the Senate seat? ABQ Andrew, payday Friday. I just ordered 2-pound bag of your coffee. Might order some to leave in the break room in the future. Left is best. Sweet. Lavender allergy, implying that Chuck Schumer is influenced by his children, is laughable. We all know the only family he answers to is the Baileys. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. You guys should talk about Adani, the Indian billionaire whose company is losing billions in value after the Hindenburg research exposed it as a fraud. Glass-Steagall, Sam remembers when AC wasn't standard in cars? I do. I sure do. Republican National Committee chairmanship race going on right now. Here is Ron DeSantis on the Charlie Kirk program yesterday. Now, Ronna McDaniels is actually sort of like arguably the more establishment candidate, but also the one that Trump wants. Whereas DeSantis...
Maybe, right? I mean, who knows?
I want everybody.
Right, it's
Yeah.
like a heads I tail, heads I win.
I
tails you
endorse
lose type
Eric.
situation.
I endorse whoever ends up winning.
Ronna
Right.
Harmeet.
Harmeet Dillon is his attorney.
Former, yes, like she's legally like advised him before. I don't know if she's currently his attorney, but she's been legal counsel for him.
And the third person running
is Mike Lindell.
is Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy. Here is
obvious
Charlie
choice.
Kirk interviewing Governor Ron DeSanctimonious.
Well, we've had 3 substandard election cycles in a row, 18, 20, and 22. And I would say of all 3 of those, 22 was probably the worst, given the political environment of a very unpopular president in Biden. Huge majorities of the people think the country's going in the wrong direction. That is an environment that's tailor-made to make big gains in the House and the Senate and state houses all across the country, and yet that didn't happen. And in fact, we even lost ground in the U.S. Senate. And so, I think we need a change. I think we need to get some new blood in the RNC. I like what Harmeet Dillon has said about getting the RNC out of D.C. Why would you want to have your headquarters in the most Democrat city in America. It's more Democrat than San Francisco is. So I think you get it in real parts of the country. You attract people who want to live in those parts of the country, not DC insiders. But I do think we need some fresh thinking. And here's the thing, just practically speaking, you need grassroots Republicans to power this organization with volunteering and donations. I think it's going to be very difficult to energize people to want to give money, to want to volunteer their time with the RNC if they don't see a change in direction.
Wow, he is not terribly engaging, but also I like the idea of...
It's about recruiting to different metropolitan areas.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't have the sauce, but that's mine. Yeah.
It's an interesting theory. Why would you put the leadership of our political party in the nation's capital?
The most Democrat city. I mean, yeah, I think that being the nation's capital probably is why. Less to do with, that there's a lot of black people there that vote Democrat.
That's a weird calculation he's making. Well, his candidate, who is what's her name?
Harmeet Dillon.
Harmeet Dillon is really on a unity ticket now. As of 2 days ago, this is what she announced with the Mike Pillow guy, or My Pillow, I should say.
Unity.
Getting ballots into ballot boxes. Ultimately, that is what the responsibility of the Republican National Committee is to do, is to win elections. It has not been winning elections, and there's time for new leadership, and I believe that person is Harmeet Dillon with Mike Lindell right by her side. Those two people together, they can land this plane right now for our country.
Ooh,
that's Caroline Wren, one of her biggest, allies. She's a long time big.
Oh, that's Caroline.
Yeah,
Wren.
that's Caroline Wren, her big Republican fundraiser, just in her place saying, "I support Harmeet Dillon."
Where was Harmeet Dillon?
Doesn't want to be seen with Mike Lindell.
Right.
I mean, also
Dylan Pillow 2023.
DeSantis is that was such a weak argument for her because Harmeet Dillon is the former vice chairwoman of the California Republican Party. So, I mean, talking about blue state roots, that's undercuts it. But I don't really think DeSantis means it. I think he just wants to differentiate himself from Trump.
Right.
I agree.
And he knows that Harmeet Dillon is not going to win.
He's got to make that more pointed, though, because he missed the chance to take a shot at Trump, given we've underperformed 2018, 2020, and 2022.
He's still not sure if he's going to run yet.
And also, the way
That's what's
Trump
going on
is
here.
differentiating himself from DeSantis is much more politically savvy, like coming out with the Medicare and Social Security statement saying, please don't cut it. I mean, and this is how DeSantis is trying to differentiate himself along the margins. Ronna McDaniel versus Harmeet Dillon. I don't think anyone gives a crap.
Well, I'm curious, though, to what you guys are saying is that he's saying our 2022 was our worst cycle. I feel like if he was really trying to carve that out, he'd be saying, except for Florida.
Yeah.
Like we did, like the only state that really ran up the score was Florida. And he's not even saying it to Charlie Kirk.
That's a great point.
It's the most susceptible audience to it too. Like Charlie Kirk wants to this side of Dave Rubin. Like Charlie Kirk wants to be like you were the person who actually won.
Yeah.
Because it also seems like the right wing media figures are far more out or agnostic on Trump than the garden variety Republican voter. Also,
I also got to think that you're bringing Mike Lindell into the leadership. And even though they're going to, I got to imagine that their idea is well, if we keep him inside the tent, at least he's pissing out instead of pissing in. Right. But he seems to me to be an unstable character. And that.
Why do you say that?
And
how could you say something so brave and yet so controversial?
I mean, look, the likelihood is that Trump is going to be the nominee. But if he's not, do you really want Mike Lindell around? I'm not even sure if you want him around if you're Trump, although,
it's a businessman.
He's a lunatic. And I that just seems like a bit of a wild card, because he would go away. But think about, they must think that they can't win without Lindell. Why else would you bring him in? Now, I want you to contemplate this for a moment. I don't know how many people vote who are in the RNC. Do we know how many people there are? Like in the Democratic, the DNC is like what, 1,000 or something like that, or 700?
Yeah, he only has one endorsement of an RNC member, Lindell.
But they must think that he brings in a lot of people. Like, why would you do that unless you think that like he could get, I don't know, 50 votes, 30 votes, 20 votes?
Well, they're not going to win. And you know what Mike Lindell and Harmeet Dillon are going to do? They're going to say that there was fraud in the RNC election process.
I certainly hope so, because that it is weird that the server that they use is in Germany.
Very weird. Very weird.
But that should be fun. And that race, that election is happening like literally right now.
Yeah, 10:30 Eastern. So so that's when they said they would start with the votes. So we should see some news at some point this afternoon.
Should we talk about Gates? Yeah, this is.
Sure.
I think this is. Matt Gates is on Geraldo Rivera's program. They, I think they've had to shift from using the debt ceiling to leverage cuts to Social Security and Medicare, and they are now shifting to their stalwart attack people who are low income. And here is Matt Gaetz talking about, and this is such a horrible, ineffective. One of the things that we learned from Bill Clinton's welfare reform in the 90s is that requiring people to work to get welfare is all well and good when there's a lot of jobs, but when there's not, it is like almost like a multiplier effect on the suffering of low-income people and kids. I mean, it is a multiplier effect, and that is like, imagine if during COVID, to qualify for food stamps or for SNAP support, you needed to have a job.
It undercuts the entire premise of the program.
And if you have a job and are eligible for SNAP, which definitely happens, we should also probably be looking at like a minimum wage so that you are not literally working poor. But here is Matt Gaetz with Sean Hannity and Geraldo Rivera.
Will Republicans come together on the debt ceiling, and will they stand strong at 222? Because Biden is betting against that. That's why he says no negotiation.
Well, if we pick the right fight, I was discouraged to see my colleague Don Bacon announce on Meet the Press that he believed that no cuts and entitlements could ever be acceptable to his wing of the Republican Party. I actually think we should have work requirements. If we imposed work requirements on SNAP and on Medicaid expansion for able-bodied adults, we would have the ability to save $1 trillion during the 10-year budget.
At the end of the day, will Republicans unite? Will Republicans
are you
unite?
going to have a mother
with 3 children?
A mother with 3 children at home make her work?
Yeah, and you know what? You can meet work requirements in a lot of these states by volunteering at nonprofits, by helping out at a local church, even job training, job training and those things. Well, let's start with Medicaid. When we reform,
all right, guys.
When we reform Medicaid, I think
we got along better than I thought we would. This actually worked out.
All right.
Actually, he's quite disappointed. He likes when Geraldo comes on and starts some shit and fights with people.
But the interesting thing here is Gates. You notice is staying away from Social Security and from Medicare. SNAP is not generally considered an entitlement. Medicaid is not generally considered an entitlement. These are programs that are geared towards specifically folks living in poverty or near poverty, depending on what state you're in. Some states, 133% of poverty gets you Medicaid. There is no, it really is indefensible. I mean, when Geraldo Rivera finds it easy to make the point of like, you're going to take a woman with 2 or 3 kids and force her to work to get food stamps. Like, how does she pay for childcare? How, like, I mean, you know,
well, go work for that nonprofit that's some local rich person's tax dodge.
I mean, even if she was able to find the job, where many instances they can't, even if that was the case, like, how do you make ends meet when you've got to pay for childcare?
Well, they're just trying to undercut these programs. That's
Yes.
it, right? Like the fact that it's implausible is the point, because then you can undercut those programs and further demonize the poor.
But they're running out of opportunities to leverage the debt ceiling because Trump, put that marker down about Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah.
And that's fortunate for all of us, because I'm not convinced that, there aren't some ghouls in the Democratic Party who wouldn't have been, well, they made us do it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see, though. Joe Manchin would love that because, he doesn't want the safety net to become a hammock.
Right. And I'm concerned a little bit about the White House's willingness to kind of accept some of that line of thinking, given the new chief of staff change. They might be more open to something.
I agree.
Cuts.
I agree. What should we do? Should we do this? Let's talk about this Project Veritas video. They targeted a mid-level management guy at Pfizer to go out on a date with a guy a couple of times, I think it was. The employee is a guy named Jordan Walker. He is, do we know exactly what his title was? He's like a director, and it's fascinating the way this is being spun by Veritas. The guy talks about conversations that they've had and about procedures that would go forward. And they're just throwing this around, but I don't know that it's legal for them to do this. But the idea of, they call it, what is it, the evolution?
Or mutation. I think they say evolution in this video. I mean, and I gotta say, I'm not sure what this guy's actual title is, because Larry Elder, who I don't believe is a credible person, says he's just the Pfizer Director of Research and Development. I don't think that's the case.
He is not the director.
Right.
He is a director. Director
right.
is a term above manager,
Right.
but
Yes.
below, executive vice president type of thing, or something like that in the corporate structure.
They're talking about this term direct evolution.
Direct
relative
evolution.
to gain
Now,
of function.
Yes. Gain of function is where you take a virus and you enhance all of its most sort of virulent aspects. Maybe it's contagiousness, maybe it's lethality, as a way of studying it. The directed evolution is where you create a controlled environment and you let the virus mutate as it would in the natural world, but you accelerate that so that you can anticipate what may be future variants of this disease, so you can create vaccines that would preempt it. Just understand these are two different things. I'm not saying that there's, either one is something that we should be doing in these places, but they're two different things, and they conflate these because one is theoretically the controlled evolution is not in any way changing the trajectory of the virus, but rather a way to track where it may head in the future. This guy's talking about monkeys in a laboratory. You put them together, you take one, and then you inject it into another, and you see where it mutates, so that you can get out in front of the vaccines. Now, make no mistake about it. As far as I'm concerned, these vaccines should be property of the United States government. We paid for the development of these. There should be allowed a profit for the pharmaceutical companies, but it should be capped by the U.S. government. This should be our property.
And contingent on the intellectual property protections being waived so that it could be used for people internationally without them having to go to Pfizer or Moderna.
So I hold no, hold no water for Pfizer. But let's just be clear what this is. This is not about taking on corporations who get funded by the U.S. government and then try and privatize the profits here. This is about promoting an anti-vax conspiracy theory. And this is the way they do it. So this first clip is, about that sort of conflating gain of function with the controlled evolution.
Meet Jordan Tristan Walker, a director of research and development strategic operations and mRNA scientific planning at Pfizer.
It sounds like gain of function to me.
I don't know, it's a little bit different. I think it's different. It's like it's definitely not gain of function. It
sounds like it is. I mean, it's okay.
No, directed evolution is very different.
Well, you're not supposed to do gain of function research with the viruses. They recommend not. But you do these selected directional mutations to try to see if you can make more potent.
Yeah.
So there is research ongoing about that. I don't know how that's going to work. There might not be any more outbreaks, just like Jesus Christ.
The gentleman seems to have absolutely no moral compass at all.
Now they bring on now this just gives away the game, right? Because they bring on an anti-vaxxer, this Dr. Malone, to, I guess, assess the moral value of this one guy who works at the at Pfizer. Now, look, this guy may or may not be moral. He may be, first of all, I think it's highly inappropriate to have these conversations even on a date, particularly in our first date. But the idea that they're bringing this guy on. Now, I wanted to go into the second half of the video when. Can
I just say on the Malone thing, like that? He's supposedly he claimed to be the inventor of mRNA, and then subsequently, that's been I think debunked a little bit, but that he has to go immediately to psychoanalysis.
Exactly. That's my point. You don't need Malone to come on and say that.
He looks like he has no morality. Okay, thanks,
the
Doc.
shape of his skull is a little bit suspect.
Go a little bit before what you have here, because I want to see when O'Keefe, does his assessment of what's just been said, because he twists it. All right, right there. Yeah.
Skulls everywhere.
Something crazy.
Suspect is the way that the virus started and moving on it. To be honest, it makes no sense if this virus popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, I know.
COVID virus experimentation on live monkeys? This is unethical, to say the least, and Walker describes those experiments as if they are ongoing and not simply a hypothetical discussion.
So, when is Pfizer going to implement the mutation of all these viruses?
I don't know. It depends on how the experiments work out, because this is just something at a time, right?
It sounds like gain of function to me.
I don't know. It's a little bit different. I think it's different. It's definitely not gain of function.
Sounds like it is. It's okay.
No, directed evolution is very different.
Direct evolution?
Directed evolution.
Directed evolution, okay. Well, so, is that what it is?
Maybe. Well, you're not supposed to do gain of function research.
Pause it for a second. Now, they're jumping around and cutting quite a bit, but it's quite clear the guy's saying no, it's not gain of function. And now he's and it's also quite clear that he doesn't really know the specifics about this stuff.
Yeah, he's pretty uninformed.
This is more he's talking about stuff that he's hearing vaguely from other parts of the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's inappropriate for him to talk about this. The guy's goading him, trying to make conversation. It's just
if there was a conspiracy, he would be much more tight-lipped about this.
Yeah, he's trying to flirt. It's messed up. It's messed up that he thinks he's on the date and he's getting filmed for this.
Totally messed up.
Right.
They recommend not. But you do these selected directional mutations to try to see if you can make more potent.
Yeah.
So there is research ongoing about that. I don't know how that's going to work. There might not be any more outbreaks, just like Jesus Christ.
So, tell me more,
Now pause it. Now understand. He could be talking about research that's ongoing, because of course there's ongoing research, I would presume, about COVID, not necessarily at Pfizer, But they jump cut to where like a part of the conversation where he is talking about Pfizer. Now, Pfizer may be doing these experiments. There's no way Pfizer's just doing these experiments like, hey, let's go down to the garage and do these experiments. If Project Veritas wants to do a big expose on how animals are used in research, I think that's,
worthwhile.
Definitely worthwhile.
Check out
but
Neuralink.
The idea that this is happening, like, exclusively in the context of COVID. And I will also say, like, if there is a hierarchy of when it's more appropriate to test things on animals, I would imagine a pandemic is pretty far up there.
Yeah, 1 million deaths in the country, yeah.
With the whole, virus mutation process.
Well, they're still kind of conducting the experiments on it, but it seems like from what I've heard, they're kind of optimizing it, but they're going slow. They were very cautious,
Right.
Obviously, don't want to
From what I've heard,
this is so non-committal.
This is like somebody who's like, I just read the trades.
Yeah.
I read the trades. Like, my job is to sort of read about what the different research is going on. This is what I've heard. It's not even clear that it's happening at Pfizer.
From what I heard, but I hope it's careful.
Yeah,
and wow, look at this guy.
Reuters reported that they. Go ahead.
What'd be interesting is documents.
Yeah.
Sorry, too much.
Yeah.
But I think they're also just trying to do it as an exploratory thing because you obviously don't want to advertise that you're trying to figure out future mutations.
Hilarious. So, did the whole virus mutation thing come from your executive, Sarah?
No. That came from we have chief scientific officers in the other divisions.
In a subsequent meeting, our undercover journalist asked if this type of gain-of-function research is already being studied at
It is not gain-of-function research.
The entire time he's like, no, you're not really using that term correctly.
Right. It's not. It's different from that. It's really different from that. And then the reason why you have O'Keefe sort of reinterpret what the guy says is because the guy doesn't necessarily say what they want him to say in terms of their video. And so you got to have O'Keefe come in and reinterpret it this way.
No. That came from we have chief scientific officers in the other divisions.
In a subsequent meeting, our undercover journalist asked if this type of gain-of-function research is already being studied at Pfizer. But no, as long as it's called directed evolution, Pfizer's in the clear.
What's the goal for Pfizer of doing that?
So probably what they want to do is to try to figure out, to some extent, there's all these new strains of variants that just pop up. Why don't we try to catch them before they pop up in nature, and we can develop a vaccine prophylactically for new variants.
Yeah.
So that's why they're thinking if you do it controlled in the lab, then we say, oh, this is an epitope. And so then if it comes out later on, in the public, we already have a vaccine kind of working on it.
Oh my God. That's perfect.
All right, pause it. Now, let's be clear here. This is exactly what you want them to do.
Exactly. They're being proactive.
And they're not creating a variant that wouldn't otherwise exist. The whole point of this structured evolution is to try and anticipate what variant is going to happen in the real world. That's what they want to do. Prophylactically, they want to be able to give folks a vaccine. And this is sort of what they do. I don't know how they do this with the flu, how they anticipate what strain is going to be out there. But this is what you want them to be doing, anticipating and figuring out the best way to anticipate what the COVID that's going to exist, particularly, once we're now in an endemic period where we are going to be living with this, maybe for the decades that we've been living with the flu that started in 1918. And so the idea is, how do we get ahead and know what vaccine? CDC did research on the bivalent, finds that it's about 50% effective in stopping infection, significantly better in reducing the severity of infection. So that's why you see such enormous amounts of people getting infected. And I don't want to say just 600 deaths, but if we were where we were in 2020, the number of deaths on a daily basis would be closer to 3,000, 3,500, maybe more.
And the case study of this being effective is the efficacy of the new bivalent vaccine, because they guessed right after doing these kinds of experiments, and this is they ended up creating something that's quite effective for this new strain.
When he has to do, say, structured evolution in quotes because the guy wouldn't say gain of function, that's a proof that this entire stunt was a failure.
Yes.
Because if the guy should have been saying, yeah, it's gain of function, but we call it that. But he's like, no, actually, like,
It's really
even
different
in the
than-
privacy of that, he's like, no, you're not getting that right.
Right. Yeah. And he's trying to say this to somebody who he's trying to hook up with.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, how gentle do you have to be in that situation?
He's trying to meet him halfway, but he's like, no, man, like, no.
And this guy's going like, oh, you're going to make a ton of money. Yeah, no kidding. That's
why I
what
went
they're in
into
this
this.
business. Like, is the big surprise? Pharmaceutical companies are in it for the profit. No.
But not in the way that he's going to try to say, which is that, like, essentially they're trying to create these viruses.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that the best business model though? Like, just control nature before nature even happens itself, right?
Yeah. If it works.
Pause it just real quick. Anticipate a need.
Right. What do you mean if it works?
Because like some of the times there were just mutations that pop up, right? And we're not prepared for it, like with Delta or Omicron,
right,
and things like that. So who knows? I mean, either way, it's gonna be a cash cow. COVID will probably be a cash cow for us for a while going forward. Like,
Yeah.
I obviously like it.
Well, I think the whole, like research of the viruses and mutating it, like, would be the ultimate.
Pause
like,
it right there. See what's going on here, right? This guy's saying like it's a cash cow. And you know how else you know this? You don't need to have someone go secret camera and ambush a mid-level worker to find this out. You can look at their stock and their shareholders meetings, which are public. But then this guy from Project Veritas is like trying to conflate a couple of things. Research of the virus. Okay, yes, of course. And mutating it.
It mutates, bro.
It is not, they are not mutating it.
Yeah.
They are watching it mutate in a controlled environment so that they can anticipate what, now,
how to treat it.
People may say like, that's too dangerous. You shouldn't do that. Perfectly, I think, legitimate. But the bottom line is they're not mutating it. They're watching it mutate as a way of anticipating where they need to take the vaccines. And this guy's conflating them and making it sound like they are creating new diseases in which to provide vaccines for. And that's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
They are trying to absorb the mutation of an existing disease.
Yeah, I mean, Big Pharma has already successfully cornered the market on responding to this sort of stuff. It's going to be a cash cow if there is a massive pandemic for them.
Indeed.
Cash cow.
Yeah, it'd be perfect.
Now, you would think that creating viruses to sell the vaccine would be illegal. But no. The pharmaceutical industry, as Walker puts it, is, quote, a revolving door for all government.
It is illegal to create a virus.
Yeah.
For money.
And if they want to make this about a critique of pharmaceutical companies and for-profit medicine, I mean, I'm all for it, but that's not what this is.
No. And this is the only time where it's a legitimate critique is coming up. The revolving door between regulators and these companies, which exists in business. I mean, in terms of like finance, in terms of DOJ, in terms of the EPA, this is a real problem. And I hope what comes out of this is some type of legislation that increases the pay and the security of people working for regulators so that that becomes their job, period, and inhibits the ability of people who have left the government to in any way engage in these type of jobs that require them to come back to the government. We have something like that with lobbyists on some level, but we should do it across the board.
Yeah, and it's counterintuitive, particularly given our like libertarian sense of fighting DC corruption. But actually, like throughout history, that's been the way you fight it, is to pay people more to actually do the business of government.
Officials, unquote.
A revolving door for all government officials.
Wow.
Yeah, for any industry though. So like in the pharma industry, all the government officials who like review our drugs, eventually come work for pharma companies. Like in the military, like all the like Army and Defense like government officials eventually go work for the defense companies afterwards.
How do you feel about that revolving door? Like,
it's pretty good for the industry, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's bad for everyone else in America.
Why is it bad for everybody else?
Because if the regulators who have to approve our drugs know that once they they stop being regulated, they want to go work for the company, they're not going to be as hard for the company. They're doing their job.
Right. We talked to Dr. Robert Malone.
Pause it for 1 second. Pause it. We don't need to hear Dr. Malone comment on. In fact, that story we read from the American Prospect today on Jeff Zients was written by a guy from the Revolving Door Project, which I can assure you is not a conservative entity. And if you're worried about Revolving Door, Google Medicare Part D and how that passed with Tom DeLay. And back during the Bush administration years, the guy who came up with Medicare Part D was literally interviewing for a position with the pharmaceutical trade organization, like a big pharma, like literally during it. I think his name was Benny. I can't remember who it was. This is a real problem, one which I can assure you no one on the right will take up. No one. But understand that video is all about anti-vax conspiracy stuff.
It's interesting, like how like the right has to this reality that business controls the government, particularly, like especially this revolving door thing. It's not like, oh, the nefarious Democrat government is sending its representatives into all these fields. It's no, like these people are all mercenaries. They work in the government for a little bit and then they go work for serve corporations. It's all corporate power.
Yep. And even this guy said, like, it happens in all industries.
How does he
military, like defense contractors?
I'm worried about Jordan Tristan. What is his name? How does he not understand this is a setup at this point?
He seems pretty drunk.
Are so
he seems pretty drunk. I mean, he's on a date. They might have waited to break this out until they were 3 drinks in.
Oh yeah, he freaks out when apparently they let him know.
Yeah, so it's kind of there was a separate video where O'Keefe confronts him directly with his audio, and literally he says to him, "I was on a date trying to impress this guy. I was lying." he literally was like, I was just saying this stuff because I wanted to impress him. That's what guys do on dates. They lie.
Yeah.
And O'Keefe is like, oh, really? Oh, well, you said it, so.
But even then, he didn't even say that much. He was like trying to be agreeable, but also denied like most of the type of nefarious things you were trying to implant in the conversation.
It's just like, I mean, I know it's like not the real story here, but it's just so gross. So it's just gross to set someone up like that.
Well, it's cheap. I mean, like, I don't think like this sort of ambushing like on certain targets and even Pfizer people, it might be interesting, but like done by these people, it's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
No, to your point, he literally says at one point to O'Keefe, like, I don't know how I'm going to trust anybody on a date again.
Yeah.
It's like that sucks. Like,
it sucks.
Emotionally, broadly, that's shitty.
And I'm sure he's getting like, he's worried for his safety because of these right-wing nuts are probably, now know his name and where he works.
And that's a lot of money he's probably out.
Yep. Cheese. Yes, it was Billy Towson. He was Republican congressman, I want to say from like Tennessee maybe or somewhere like that. I can't remember. But he went on to basically write the drug bill for Medicare and then get a job with Big Pharma. Like was interviewing during that fight. Calling from an 804 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Adam. I am calling from Virginia.
Adam from Virginia, what's on your mind?
Hey, Sam. I'm doing good. So first of all, I just want to say, appreciate everything you do with the show. I love that you guys take callers and everything. I really enjoyed this past week of the Daily Wire Steven Crowder segments. You've been
it was fun. That was pretty fun.
Yeah,
it was pretty fun.
But look, Sam, what I'm going to need from you though is I need you to make more stock and financial opinion pieces because I remember last month a caller called in and he was considering selling the Tesla in his retirement account. And, since that point, looks like Tesla has actually been up over 60%. So you and Jim Cramer called selling Tesla at about the right time. So I'm just going to need you to call out more financial advice so I can pretty much do the opposite.
I would suggest definitely doing the opposite of whatever my financial advice is at any given time.
Perfect.
Tesla stock back up. Is that it? I mean, I just think that like
Tesla stock back up. I mean, it's great.
I don't really
yeah,
follow the
it's
market
been
broadly
up.
speaking. Is the market itself back up? Is the market up in general?
So we're in an interesting spot. Earnings, of course, are kind of way higher than all expected. So the market is pretty much at a really massive high right now. I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of months, especially, when we have reports that every major bank is saying that a recession is looming and consumer credit is at an all-time high. So I'm not sure how that's going to affect the market, broadly speaking. It actually should not be this high, but, earnings just crushed all expectations, and maybe expectations were just super low. So this is just kind of an overreaction from the market, but we'll see.
All right. Well, I appreciate the phone call. I still think long term the prospects of that company are just not that good.
Yeah, I would minimize my exposure to that, but I mean, whatever. I don't own any sort of stock, so this is all just idle for me.
Well, I mean, if that's the argument, then you should probably get out of probably every American car manufacturer, because I think Tesla has grossed more than all of them combined in the past year.
I mean,
also not a fan of Elon. I'm not a fan of Elon at all, but it is what it is. When you play finances, you kind of have to separate the.
Oh no,
I don't
get it.
understand that thinking though, caller, because I feel like the bubble's eventually going to burst for Tesla, given the fact that those other car manufacturers have their own electric vehicles coming, especially the luxury ones like Porsche.
Their electric vehicles aren't even close, especially if you look at something like Mercedes. I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, they are non-competitive with Tesla. I mean, Tesla is grossing way more than every other American car manufacturer.
Right now,
it is what it is.
You got to anticipate the market.
I can't.
Are you invested? Are you invested in Tesla?
I am. I have no position in Tesla. I actually had a contract, so I had a contract expiring the end of the month. I was up around 300%. I sold it. I have no long position in Tesla because I think the market is in favor of an imminent crash, but I think it was a strong short-term play. The fundamentals and the technicals really panned out that the 110 was a strong bottom.
Okay, well, wait a second. So you and I didn't disagree, because this guy wasn't just talking about he was talking about his retirement fund. Would you put your retirement fund in there?
No, in that sense, your advice was even worse, because then assuming he would be gaining, right? If he were to swap out at Tesla at that time, that would be the worst possible scenario, right? Because then he would pay taxes on his capital gains for early swapping in his retirement fund, and he would have pulled out at a bottom, right? So that would have been the worst time to pull out.
I am talking about long term. Would you want to be in Tesla?
Depends. If my long term is 1 year, no, I'd probably swap. If my long term is 5 years, no, I'd stay in Tesla.
All right.
For sure.
Well, why don't you just send me what your portfolio is, and I'll short everything that you're doing.
I'm pretty short as it is, so if you want to long what I'm doing, then all right, fair enough.
All right, appreciate the phone call.
Appreciate you. You
Bye.
take care. Bye bye.
Day trader. That's what I hear.
Yeah, I mean, I don't short things, so.
Yeah, I think I actually think when anybody thinks that they has the energy like they know what they're talking about, I always just remember that nobody beats the market, and this is all just sort of post hoc rationalization.
Most of my money is tied up in those like family-sized pretzel bags, because that's what it's all like for snacking.
Makes sense.
The pretzel crackers. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And the pop chips.
Oh, those are good.
Yeah. They don't really have big holdings in the stock market. Calling from an 810 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Garrett from Michigan.
Garrett from Michigan. What's on your mind?
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for everything you guys do over there. When I was in middle school, I started listening to you guys. And then I was kind of in the right-wing pipeline, sadly, and I was a big fan of Dave Rubin's high IQ ideas.
Whoa.
Yeah. And Michael Brooks, though, his videos on Dave Rubin, ironically, helped me sort of get through a rough time in my life. And so I wanted to first thank you guys for all that.
Sweet.
But I have a question for you, but I wanted to ask if I could just preset it real quick.
Sure, of course.
So I've been reading a book, and it's actually the author. You had him on your show maybe, I think it was 10 years ago. His name's Nick Terse, and he wrote the book "Kill Anything That Moves: The Real American War in Vietnam."
Yeah, I feel like we've had him on twice, maybe.
Yes.
He's a good writer. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm a college student right now. I'm going to UM Flint. I'm looking to be a teacher. I'm majoring in social studies, and as a college student majoring in social studies right now, Vietnam is sort of, and I guess in my high school we sort of briefly touched on it. It's not really a huge part, sadly. More of the Cold War era. But anyways, I was reading the book last night. I was listening to the audiobook while at work, and listening to the audiobook, it really just stuck with me. Just sort of learning about the systematic killings of the Vietnamese civilians and just the details of, I guess, just American GIs constantly just throwing grenades into bunkers and villages and homes and stuff like that. And anyways,
setting villages on fire.
Yes, and helicopters shooting rockets at villagers farming the rice paddies. But anyways, reading through the book, it really made me think of the book Night by Elie Wiesel, who's a survivor of Birkenau and Auschwitz. And reading through it, I really think that Kill Anything That Moves should be a book that is read in American high schools. I think it does a really good job of showing just the arrogance of the American military at that time, and how the racism and a lot of corporate greed during the war it was a huge turning point in America. And I think the book does just an amazing job of showing that massacres weren't an isolated incident.
Right.
In this case for
strategy.
Vietnam. It was a common occurrence where American GIs, not all of them obviously, but a huge majority of them, would go into these villages and just slaughter these people. And I won't even get into Way City, but anyway, we're
Nick
sort of
Terse
living.
Is the author of that? I second that recommendation. That it goes into our sort of narrative about My Lai, the My Lai massacre. That it was like a sort of one-off.
A few bad apples.
Yeah, no, it's the one we heard about.
And Bob Kerrey, congressman from a senator from Nebraska at one point, and then ended up being like the president of the New School. This is a guy who was like deep into that, and the way that we dealt with sort of like the sort of like slow understanding of just how many of these massacres took place, particularly My Lai, but just the entire philosophy of like you got to destroy the village to save it type of situation. It was super, super creepy. And in fact, George Herbert Walker Bush, I think it was, in his attack on Iraq, the first Kuwait War, I think the idea that he was trying to pitch was that I think it was him, or maybe it was his son, I can't remember, with the specter of Vietnam was over. We had gotten over the sort of reluctance to use force. It was gross. It was gross. I mean, the way that this country sort of like absorbed that information, became aware of it. Really, in many respects, the lessons that we learned from Vietnam were don't allow reporters to report independently from a war zone. Don't show bodies coming home in coffins. Don't have conscription, because if you can have an all-volunteer force, it becomes a lot easier for the American public to not be aware of what's going on in these instances. Use more mercenaries. Those were the major lessons, I think, that we learned from Vietnam in many respects.
Yeah. And getting to my question, I'm sorry for taking so long. My main question is, after I read the book and sort of learned more about basically these American-made Vietnamese ghettos, very similar to the ones that the Nazis made for Jews during the Holocaust. I sort of thought of, we're sort of living in a time now where politicians, and this is pretty recent, I mean, we just had an African-American AP class basically get banned from, I believe it was Florida schools, if I'm
Florida,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, and that is I have those classes here in Michigan. I go to Grand Lake High School. We do have a crazy lady on our Board of Education, Amy Facinello. She's interesting. But when I went to Grand Lake High School, I mean, we have an African American AP class. We have an Asian class. I took a Women in American History class. And so I suppose my question just for you guys is, what steps do you think do we need to take in order to make sure that history teachers in our country are allowed to speak about the harsh realities of America's past without causing just this huge, immense controversy all over the world?
I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, it really ultimately is make sure that Republicans don't get a hold of your state government. I mean, honestly, I mean, I think you know, in a better world, we would be able to we would change the way that public school is funded. It would be funded by the federal government. We would, in conjunction with states, not based on property taxes, because that becomes a way of just like basically segregating our schools, you know, both socially and economically. And the federal government would have basic standards tied to federal funding that were like, this is, you know, I mean, we've done that before where we put out like, you know, a core curriculum thing that happened during Arnie Duncan's education time. It wasn't, it was, you know, highly encouraged. I'm not sure like we were forced to assume it, but we could put out like, you need to cover these topics, like the idea of not looking at our involvement in these places is just not an option. The idea of not looking at, you know, sort of the worst elements. I mean, history is history, and it should be, we should be looking into these dynamics. And I would also argue that, like, you know, to ignore the African American studies in our history is to really miss some of the core, I mean, if not the core, fundamental drivers of our society, right? Like, I mean, you know, the country was built on slave labor, and so much of our politics have been have involved maintaining an underclass, and it is revelatory, I think, for how that has been done. But appreciate the call.
Yes, thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've had a couple of good calls from young people over the past couple of days. That's encouraging. Folks, we don't have any more time for phone calls. Apologies, of course. Apologies. I think we just read a couple IMs. We got to get out of here because I got to do that pre-tape. Space Case. Can we cancel this Feldman guy already? Real MR fans love Emma's crippling gambling addiction, and the right-wing Christian fascist money supporting it.
Yeah, canceled. He's canceled. Feldman.
Wait, they really did a honeypot. Veritas has to be a CIA op. Sergeant Flux. How does Project Veritas get away with secretly recording conversations? Are all these recorded in one-party states?
If you're in public, you can record, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so I think that's
don't
a phone call thing, right?
Yeah, I don't know why it's illegal for people to record conversation through one-party consent laws, but it makes me thankful where I am in the state of Pennsylvania. We have all-party consent laws.
If you're in public, you can be recorded.
Left of the box. Emma's ring is awesome.
Oh, thank you. My mom got it for me for Christmas.
Progressive Florida man, stop yelling at the team apps. Take a moment to update. Take a deep breath. Listen to DJ Danarchy and chill. Team apps? 508 Club. Is Blinkist basically Spark Notes for nonfiction? Is Spark Notes like Monarch Notes?
Spark Notes
It
is
is-
like
it's similar.
Oh, I don't even know what Monarch Notes is. It's like abbreviated books.
Yeah.
Dude, where's Matthew Film Guy? I want a review of Puss in Boots.
He was at the show on Sunday night.
Yes, it is true about Blinkist.
And I've heard Puss in Boots is great.
I didn't even know it was real.
It's
thing.
like it's a animated movie. I've heard it's good.
Bunker Spectre, videoing someone in these IRC-like things should be a crime. All right, 5 more. Coax Hoodle. Sam, Emma, Matt, Bradley, I just wanted to mention while your overall point about directed evolution was correct regarding coronavirus, DE itself is a tool that can be used to develop aspects in proteins that you want slash hope to have a function you want. So you could theoretically use DE to develop a more virulent virus and then create a vaccine for that virus. For example, DE is basically just molecular biology tool like mutation, CRISPR, PCR, etc. J-Man Raps. Sup, guys? Hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'm hitting that bong hard. Anyway, it's been extremely warm winter here on the island. Everything's fine, though we're definitely not headed towards the horrific hellfires. Left is best. Minnesota Mailman, don't forget we need to continue to raise interest rates to increase unemployment numbers and bring down inflation. Capitalism requires winners and losers. Let's continue to exploit the poor for the benefits of the wealthy. Blame the poor when they can't afford to survive. Indeed. Right or wrong? Sam's Bizarro World, where Matt is his son and Emma is Madam Bookie and Trump was president. Oh, wait. Libtod. I like that stock market guy. If I'm not mistaken, he actually agrees with the show's politics. Could be cool to have someone on talking about finance and markets, etc. CNBC content from a left perspective. Like Emma's covering sports, another aspect of popular culture is stereotypically not aligned with progressive politics. I don't know how much,
That's like, saying we should get into the oil and gas industry is like...
Because I don't think that stuff is actually meaningful. I think CNBC is a waste of time to sell advertisements. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't actually participate in the stock market, but I feel like it's not actually substantial discussion. Maybe I'm wrong.
Rob from Dedham. Sam, can we get a 15th anniversary DVD release of A Bad Situation? It has 2 reviews on Letterboxd, but there's no way to watch it. Unlikely, but maybe a 25th. Apathetically steamrolled. I love how the right pretends to be against the profiteering of Big Pharma on the COVID vaccine. Bring up nationalization. They suddenly get quiet. And the final IM of the week. Wait, what?
Yeah.
It's today Friday?
Yes.
I had no idea. Like, you looked at me and I'm like, wait, is today Monday? It could have been. Live Free and Eddie. My uncle showed up at my place recently driving an electric Mustang. Uncompetitive with Tesla was not my impression of that vehicle. Matt, Bradley, Emma, great job this week, which it appears to be over.
Yes.
See you on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive,